Lieutenant He-Jin Park stood at attention in the gleaming white corridor of the Galactic Council's research vessel. His crisp marine uniform felt out of place among the flowing robes of the alien scientists who hurried past him. After 20 years of space exploration, humans had finally been invited to join the Galactic Council, and He-Jin was chosen as Earth's first military liaison. Chief Researcher Young Mai Li approached him. She was tall and slender, with silvery skin that sparkled under the ship's lights. Her large, dark eyes studied him with a mixture of curiosity and worry. "Lieutenant Park, thank you for joining us," she said in perfect English. "We are about to review Earth's wildlife database. Would you help us understand some things?" He-Jin nodded and followed her into the main research chamber. The room was filled with floating screens showing images of Earth's animals. Around the screens, alien scientists from 12 different species watched with wide eyes. "This cannot be real," one of the scientists said, pointing at a video of a honey badger fighting a snake. "How can such a small creature fight a venomous predator?" "Oh, that's quite normal on Earth," He-Jin explained. "Honey badgers are famous for their bravery. They even steal food from lions sometimes." The scientists moved away from him slightly. Yang Mi's silver skin flickered, a sign of nervousness in her species. "And humans?" She hesitated. "You live on the same planet as these creatures." "We do," He-Jin said. He pointed to another screen showing a man walking his dog in a park. "Many of us keep predators as pets. Dogs descended from wolves, but now they're our closest animal companions." The room fell silent. One of the younger scientists dropped his datapad. "You domesticated predators?" Yang Mi asked, her voice shaking. "For companionship." He-Jin realized then how different their worlds must be. Most planets don't have predators like Earth's, do they? "No," Yang Mi explained. "Most civilized worlds evolved with minimal predator threats. The most dangerous creature on my home planet is smaller than your Earth rabbit." More videos played on the screens. A crocodile catching its prey, eagles swooping down on fish, and lions hunting in groups. With each new image, the alien scientists moved further away from He-Jin. "And yet," He-Jin said, trying to ease their fears, "humans have not just survived but thrived. We learned from these creatures. Their strength taught us to be stronger. Their speed taught us to be smarter." An alarm suddenly flashed on one of the screens. A young alien researcher named Du-Han had fainted while watching a video of a spider catching its prey. As He-Jin helped the medical team lift Du-Han onto a floating stretcher, he heard Yang Mi whispering to her assistant, "If Earth's animals are this terrifying, imagine what their marines must be capable of." He-Jin smiled to himself. If they thought Earth's wildlife was scary, they had no idea what humans could do when they needed to. But that was a lesson for another day. For now, he had to figure out how to explain to these peaceful beings that on Earth, even the plants could be predators. He looked at the next video in the queue, a Venus flytrap catching a fly, and decided that maybe that conversation could wait until tomorrow. "Chief Researcher," he said, turning to Yang Mi, "perhaps we should continue this review after lunch. I could tell you about some of our gentler creatures, like butterflies and rabbits." Yang Mi's skin color returned to its normal shade. "Yes, Lieutenant Park. That would be most appreciated." As they left the research chamber, He-Jin noticed how the alien crew members kept a careful distance from him. He couldn't blame them. They came from worlds of peace and harmony, while he came from a planet where survival meant understanding both the hunter and the hunted. Little did they know that understanding would soon prove more valuable than any of them could imagine. The ship's dining hall was quiet except for the soft hum of air filters. Security Officer Jae-ho Kim sat across from Lieutenant He-Jin Park, his gray-tinted hands folded neatly on the table. Unlike Chief Researcher Yang Mi's silver skin, Jae-ho's species had a darker, metallic appearance that reminded He-Jin of brushed steel. "On my world," Jae-ho said, breaking the silence, "the largest animal is what you might call a grass eater. It stands no taller than your knee." He projected a hologram showing a creature that looked like a round, fluffy pillow with 6 legs. He-Jin nodded, taking another bite of his Earth-style rice bowl. The ship's food synthesizer did a decent job recreating human dishes, even if the texture was slightly off. We have never needed weapons, Jaho continued. No predators means no need for defense. That is why your Earth fascinated the Council so much. More crew members gathered around their table, drawn by the conversation. Among them was Dr. Sun Wukang, the xenobiologist whose silver-green scales marked her as being from one of the Outer Rim worlds. Lieutenant Park, Sun Wu said, her translator making her voice sound musical, is it true that humans willingly enter the water where your sharks swim? Yes, He-Jin replied. Some people even cage dive with great whites. It's a popular tourist activity. The aliens exchanged looks of horror. A young crew member in the back actually whimpered. But why? Jaho asked, his metallic skin rippling with confusion. Why would anyone choose to be near a predator? He-Jin thought for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Humans are curious by nature. We want to understand everything around us, even the dangerous things. Maybe especially the dangerous things. And this is why you became a Marine? Sun Wu asked. She had moved closer, her scientific curiosity seemingly stronger than her fear. Partly. He-Jin said. Marines are protectors. On Earth, we learned long ago that the best way to protect others is to understand both predator and prey. We study how they think, how they move, how they hunt. You think like predators. Jaiho's voice was barely a whisper. When we need to, He-Jin explained. But we also think like prey. Earth species that survived learned to be both. A deer isn't just a prey animal. It can fight back when it needs to. Humans are the same. The dining hall had grown crowded now. Even Chief Researcher Yongmei had joined them, her silver skin glowing with interest. Tell us more about your training, she said. How does one learn to be both hunter and hunted? He-Jin set down his spoon and stood up. It might be easier to show you. Does the ship have a training room? 20 minutes later, He-Jin stood in the ship's exercise chamber. The aliens watched from behind a safety barrier as he demonstrated basic marine combat moves. See how this stance copies a leopard's hunting position, he explained, showing them a crouch, but the defensive move that follows. He rolled and sprang up. That comes from studying how rabbits escape predators. Fascinating, Sun Wu muttered, taking notes. Your species literally learned from both sides of the predator-prey relationship. Not just learned. He-Jin said. We improved upon it. A human can think like a wolf one moment and a deer the next. We can switch between hunter and hunted as needed. That's what makes us good protectors. As he finished his demonstration, He-Jin noticed the aliens' expressions had changed. There was still fear there, yes, but now mixed with something else. Respect. Perhaps, Yongmei said thoughtfully. We were wrong to only see the terrifying aspects of Earth's influence on your species. There is wisdom in understanding both sides of nature's balance. He-Jin smiled. They were beginning to understand. But as an alert flashed on the ship's communication panel, he had no idea how soon they would need that understanding. The alert siren pierced through the training room's calm atmosphere. Red lights flashed along the corridors of the research vessel, as crew members rushed to their stations. Lieutenant He-Jin Park followed Chief Researcher Yongmi to the bridge, his marine training automatically kicking in as he assessed the situation. Report, Yongmi commanded, her silver skin pulsing with anxiety. The main screen showed a distant research outpost on a dark planet. A communications officer spoke quickly. We've lost contact with Research Outpost 7. Their last transmission was cut off mid-sentence. They were studying ancient ruins on planet KX-291. He-Jin studied the screen carefully. The outpost looked like a collection of white domes connected by tunnels, nestled among tall, black stone structures that must be the ruins. Show me the last transmission, Yongmei ordered. The screen flickered to life. A terrified alien scientist appeared, his blue scales pale with fear. Something's wrong with the security systems. The stasis chambers in the ruins. There, the transmission ended in static. "We are the closest ship," Security Officer Jeho said, his metallic skin darkening with concern. "Council protocol requires us to investigate." Hejin noticed how the bridge crew trembled at those words. These peaceful beings had never faced a crisis like this before. He stepped forward. "Chief Researcher," he said, "I volunteer to lead the rescue mission." The bridge fell silent. Yang Mi turned to him, her large eyes studying his face. "Lieutenant Park, this is not your responsibility. You are here as a cultural liaison, not a rescue operative." "With respect, ma'am, this is exactly what Marines train for. Your crew has the scientific knowledge, but I have combat experience. We'll need both." Xenobiologist Sun Wu spoke up from her station. "He's right. If something has gone wrong in those ruins, we need someone who understands how to handle threats." Jaiho nodded slowly. "I will join the rescue team. As security officer, it is my duty." "I'm coming too," Sun Wu added. "Those ruins contain ancient biological samples. My expertise might be needed." Hejin watched as Yang Mei considered their words. The ship's sensors showed the planet below them, a dark world with twin moons and vast plains of black stone. The ruins rose from these plains like the teeth of some ancient beast. "Very well," Yang Mei finally said. "But remember, this is a rescue mission only. We go in, find our people, and get out. No unnecessary risks." Hejin began planning immediately. "We'll need environmental suits, basic weapons, and scientific equipment." "Jaiho, what kind of security systems does the outpost have?" As Jaiho explained the technical details, Hejin noticed something interesting on the sensor readings. The temperature around the ruins was rising, but there was no obvious heat source. "Sun Wu," he asked, "what exactly were they studying in those ruins?" The xenobiologist checked her datapad. The ruins appeared to be some kind of research facility, built by an ancient civilization. The outpost team found sealed chambers containing something. The last report mentioned unusual energy readings, but nothing specific. Hejin felt a familiar tension in his shoulders, the same feeling he got before every dangerous mission on Earth. Something wasn't right about this situation, and his instincts were screaming warnings. "We should prepare for the worst," he said. "On Earth, we have a saying, hope for the best, but plan for the worst." The aliens didn't understand the saying, but they understood his tone. As they prepared for descent to the planet's surface, Hejin caught his reflection in a dark screen. He was the only human among these peaceful beings, about to face an unknown threat on a distant world. But somehow, he knew that everything he had learned on Earth, all those lessons from both predator and prey, were about to become very, very important. The rescue shuttle cut through the dark planet's atmosphere like a knife through water. Lieutenant Hejin Park sat in the pilot's seat, his hand steady on the controls despite the turbulence. Behind him, Security Officer Jaiho and xenobiologist Sun Wu checked their environmental suits one final time. "The outpost's landing pad should be 300 meters ahead," Jaiho said, his metallic skin reflecting the red glow of the warning lights. "But I'm not receiving any automated landing signals." Hejin nodded, switching to manual controls. Through the shuttle's front viewport, he could see the research outpost below. The white domes looked ghostly against the black stone ruins that surrounded them. No lights shone from any of the windows. "Temperature outside is -40 degrees, Sun Wu reported, her scaled fingers moving across the sensor panel. "But those energy readings from the ruins are getting stronger. They're putting out heat like a small sun." The shuttle touched down with a gentle thud. Hejin performed a final systems check before standing up. "Remember what I taught you about moving in hostile environments. Stay close, stay quiet, and always watch your corners." His alien companions nodded, but he could see their fear. On their peaceful worlds, They had never needed to learn these skills. Now their lives might depend on them. The airlock cycled open, and cold air rushed in around their environmental suits. He-Jin led the way down the shuttle's ramp, his boots crunching on the frozen ground. The twin moons cast strange shadows across the landscape, making the ruins look like they were moving. "Main entrance is this way," Jai-Ho whispered, pointing to a sealed door in the nearest dome. He pressed his hand against the security panel, but nothing happened. "Power's out." "Can you override it?" He-Jin asked, scanning the area. Something about those shadows didn't look right to him. Jai-Ho pulled out a small device and connected it to the panel. "Yes, but it will take a few minutes." "Sun-Woo, what do your sensors say about those ruins?" He-Jin asked, not taking his eyes off the ancient structures. The xenobiologist checked her instruments. "The energy readings are fluctuating. It's like something in there is waking up." A loud click came from the door as Jai-Ho's override worked. The entrance slid open with a hiss, revealing a dark corridor beyond. He-Jin switched on his suit's lights, creating a bright beam that cut through the darkness. "Stay behind me," he ordered, moving forward. His marine training took over as he checked each corner and doorway. The outpost was silent except for their footsteps and breathing. They found the first sign of trouble in the main research lab. Tablets and equipment were scattered across the floor, as if someone had left in a hurry. One of the computer screens still worked, running on emergency power. Sun-Woo moved to the computer, her scaled hands shaking slightly as she accessed the files. According to this, they found something in the stasis chambers, something alive. A deep rumble shook the building. Dust fell from the ceiling, and in the distance, they heard a sound that made their blood run cold, a screech that was definitely not human or like any known alien species. "What was that?" Jai-Ho whispered, his metallic skin now almost black with fear. He-Jin checked his weapon, remembering his training from Earth. The sound reminded him of something, but not quite any Earth predator he knew. It was different, alien, but the hunting call was unmistakable. "Whatever they found in those ruins," he said quietly, "it's hunting now, and we're in its territory." The lights in the corridor flickered once, then died completely, leaving them in darkness broken only by their suit lights. Another screech echoed through the outpost, closer this time. The hunt had begun. The darkness in the research outpost seemed to breathe around them. Lieutenant He-Jin Park moved silently through the corridor, leading his team deeper into the facility. Behind him, Security Officer Jai-Ho and xenobiologist Sun-Woo stayed close, their suit lights creating overlapping beams in the blackness. A scratching sound echoed from somewhere ahead. He-Jin raised his hand, signaling the others to stop. The sound came again, closer this time, like crystal being dragged across metal. "The main research chamber is just ahead," Sun-Woo whispered, checking her data pad. "That's where they kept the samples from the stasis chambers." He-Jin noticed something on the floor, a trail of strange, glittering marks that seemed to shine with their own light. He knelt down to examine them. "These look like claw marks," he said quietly, "but they're crystalline, almost like diamond." "Silicon-based life forms," Sun-Woo breathed, her scales turning pale with realization. The ancient ruins. They must have been studying silicon-based creatures. Another screech pierced the darkness, so close it made their environmental suits vibrate. Jai-Ho grabbed He-Jin's arm, his metallic skin almost black with terror. "We need to run," Jai-Ho whispered urgently. "On our worlds, when danger comes, we hide. We run. That's how we survive." He-Jin shook his head. "Running isn't always the answer. Sometimes you have to face the predator." He remembered his training on Earth, studying how different animals handled threats. "If we run, it will chase us. That's what predators do." A crash came from the research chamber ahead. The door was partially open, and through the gap, they saw movement, something large and crystalline, catching the light from their suits and breaking it into rainbow patterns. He-Jin motioned for his companions to stay still. The creature moved past the door, and for the first time, they saw it clearly. It was roughly the size of a bear, but its body was made of translucent, crystal-like segments. 6 legs carried it silently across the floor, and its head was crowned with sharp, diamond-hard spines. Sun Wu's hands flew across her datapad. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "A perfect silicon-based predator. But how did it survive in stasis for so long?" The creature stopped moving. Its crystalline head turned toward them, and He-Jin saw that it had no eyes, only sensor pits that glowed with an inner light. "Don't move," He-Jin ordered softly. "It hunts by sensing vibrations and heat." But it was too late. The creature had already detected them. It turned fully toward their group, its crystal body reflecting their suit lights in a dazzling display. Then it did something that made even He-Jin's trained instincts freeze. It started to change color, its transparent body becoming darker, more opaque. "It's adapting," Sun Wu said in wonder. "Its crystalline structure is changing to absorb our light instead of reflecting it." The creature crouched, its 6 legs spreading wide for balance. He-Jin recognized the pose immediately. It was a hunting stance, just like a cat preparing to pounce. "When I give the signal," he said calmly, "move slowly toward the side door. No sudden movements." But before he could give the signal, they heard more screeching from behind them. 3 more crystalline shapes appeared at the other end of the corridor. They were surrounded. He-Jin's mind raced, analyzing the situation like he'd been trained to do. These weren't Earth predators. They were something entirely different. But predators were predators, no matter what planet they came from, and he knew how to deal with predators. "Well," he said, a small smile forming behind his suit's faceplate, "looks like we're about to give our alien friends a lesson in how humans handle being hunted." Lieutenant He-Jin Park assessed the situation with practiced calm. 4 crystalline predators surrounded them in the dark corridor of the research outpost. Behind him, Jai-Ho and Sun Wu pressed close together, their fear evident in their rapid breathing. "The laboratory 3 meters to our right," He-Jin whispered. "When I say move, go there. Don't run. Walk steadily." "But they'll attack," Jai-Ho protested softly, his metallic skin almost black with terror. "No, they won't. Not yet." He-Jin remembered his training about Earth's pack hunters. "They're testing us. Learning about us, just like wolves do." The closest crystal creature took a step forward, its diamond-hard claws clicking against the floor. He-Jin stood his ground, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. He reached down and picked up a broken piece of equipment. "What are you doing?" Sun Wu asked, her scaled hands clutching her datapad. "Making them curious," He-Jin replied. He held the equipment in front of his suit lights, creating shifting patterns of light on the walls. The creature's sensor pits glowed brighter, all of them focusing on the dancing reflections. "Now," He-Jin said calmly, "walk to the lab. I'll follow." His alien companions moved carefully toward the laboratory door. The crystal predators watched but didn't attack. He-Jin kept moving the equipment, maintaining their attention. It was a trick he'd learned from studying how small animals sometimes escape larger predators. Distract, then move. Once inside the laboratory, He-Jin sealed the door. The room was large, with multiple exits and lots of equipment. Perfect for what he had in mind. "Their bodies absorb heat," Sun Wu said, checking her instruments. "That's how they track us. Our suit temperatures make us easy to find." He-Jin nodded. "Then we'll use that against them." He moved to a control panel. "Jai-Ho, can you reroute power to this room only?" The security officer worked quickly at the panel. Lights flickered on, and the laboratory's climate control hummed to life. Outside, they heard the creatures scratching at the door. "I need you both to trust me," He-Jin said. "We're going to hunt the hunters." He explained his plan quickly. On Earth, every predator could become prey. These creatures were no different. They hunted by sensing heat and movement. So he would give them plenty of both, but not from their bodies. Working together, they activated multiple pieces of equipment around the lab. Each machine began to generate heat, creating a confusing pattern of thermal signatures. He-Jin then used his suit's external speaker to play recorded sounds of their movements. The door burst open. The crystal creatures entered cautiously, their sensor pits glowing as they tried to make sense of the multiple heat sources and sounds. They began to separate, each investigating a different signal. Now, He-Jin whispered into his radio. From 3 different positions, they activated the lab's emergency cooling system. Liquid nitrogen sprayed from the ceiling, creating an instant fog of super cold air. The creatures screeched in confusion as their heat sensors were overwhelmed. Their crystalline bodies began to crack from the sudden temperature change. He-Jin led his team through the chaos, using the fog as cover. They reached the far exit just as the first creature shattered, its crystal body unable to handle the thermal stress. The others retreated, their hunting confidence broken by this unexpected defense. In the corridor beyond, Sunwoo stared at He-Jin with new understanding. "You turned their strengths into weaknesses," she said, "just like you said humans learn to do." "Earth taught us that every predator has limits," He-Jin replied. "Even the deadliest hunter can become prey if its target understands how to think like both." A distant screech echoed through the outpost. There were more creatures out there, but now they knew how to fight them. More importantly, his alien companions were beginning to understand why humans were different from any other species they had encountered. They weren't just survivors. They were adapters, learners, and when necessary, hunters themselves. The emergency lights cast an eerie red glow through the research outpost's central archive room. Lieutenant He-Jin Park secured the door while xenobiologist Sunwoo worked frantically at the main computer terminal. Security officer Jai-Ho kept watch at the other entrance, his metallic skin finally returning to its normal shade after their encounter with the crystal creatures. "I found something," Sunwoo announced, her scaled fingers moving quickly across the holographic display. These creatures weren't natural evolution. They were weapons. He-Jin moved to look at the ancient data scrolling across the screen. The text was in an old alien language, but the images were clear enough. Diagrams showing how the crystal beings were created and grown in laboratories. "The civilization that built these ruins," Sunwoo continued, her voice filled with wonder. "They were master bioengineers. They created these silicon-based predators to be perfect hunters, unstoppable weapons." "Nothing is unstoppable," He-Jin said, remembering their successful defense in the laboratory. "Every predator has weaknesses." "That's just it," Sunwoo said excitedly. "According to these records, the creatures were designed to adapt to any defense. They can change their crystal structure to handle different temperatures, alter their hunting strategies, even learn from defeat. They were supposed to be the ultimate soldiers." A crash echoed from somewhere in the facility. The surviving creatures were still hunting them, but keeping their distance now, having learned caution from their earlier encounter. "If they're so perfect, what happened to the civilization that created them?" Jai-Ho asked, his hand gripping his weapon tightly. Sunwoo's scales paled as she read more of the ancient text. The creatures worked too well. They couldn't be controlled. The civilization had to abandon this entire planet to contain them. They locked the creatures in stasis chambers, hoping they would never wake up. "Until our research team accidentally released them," Jai-Ho added grimly. The Jin studied the creature diagrams carefully. Something about this situation felt familiar. "These engineers made the same mistake that many humans did in our early days," he said thoughtfully. "They tried to create the perfect predator, but they forgot about the most important part of nature's balance." "What's that?" Sunwoo asked. "Evolution isn't just about becoming the perfect hunter. It's about the relationship between predator and prey. Each makes the other stronger, smarter." He-Jin pointed to the data. "These creatures never had to evolve naturally. They never learned the limits that all Earth's predators learned through millions of years of natural selection. Sun Wu's eyes widened with understanding. That's why they were confused by our tactics in the lab. They've never faced prey that could think like a predator. Exactly. He Jin smiled. On Earth, even the smallest prey animals have tricks to survive. Rabbits zigzag when they run. Octopi can change color. Every creature has learned to adapt, to think, to survive. A new alert flashed on the computer screen. The outpost's sensors showed more crystal creatures emerging from the ruins, drawn by the energy signatures of their battle. There are too many, Jaho said, fear creeping back into his voice. We can't fight them all. We don't have to fight them, Hejin replied, a plan forming in his mind. We just need to think like Earth's cleverer prey animals. Sometimes the best way to beat a predator isn't to fight it. It's to make it defeat itself. He turned to Sun Wu. You said they adapt to different temperatures. What happens if they have to adapt to too many changes at once? The xenobiologist checked the ancient data, her eyes brightening. Their crystalline structure would become unstable. They wouldn't be able to maintain their form. He-Jin nodded. Earth's creatures had taught him well. Sometimes survival wasn't about being the strongest or fastest. Sometimes it was about being the smartest, about understanding both sides of the hunt. Then I know how we can stop them, he said, and save everyone in this outpost. Lieutenant He-Jin Park stood in the outpost's environmental control center, his hands moving quickly across the master control panel. Around him, Security Officer Jai-Ho and xenobiologist Sun Wu worked at other stations, following his instructions carefully. The research team is secure in the sealed emergency shelter, Jai-Ho reported, his metallic skin gleaming under the emergency lights. All 17 survivors accounted for. Good, He-Jin said, not looking up from his work. Sun Wu, how are the temperature adjustments coming? The xenobiologist's scaled fingers danced across her console. Ready. I set up alternating zones of extreme heat and cold throughout the facility, just like you asked. He-Jin nodded. His plan was simple but needed perfect timing. On Earth, many prey animals survived by making their predators work too hard, waste too much energy, or get confused by too many signals at once. They would use the same strategy here. The crystal creatures had gathered outside the control center. Their crystalline bodies glowed with inner light as they prepared to attack. But this time, He-Jin was ready for them. Remember what I said about Earth's rabbits? He asked his companions. They survive by making predators chase them in exhausting patterns. We're going to do the same thing, but with temperature zones instead of movement. He pressed the final sequence of commands. Instantly, the outpost's environmental systems came alive. Different sections of the facility began rapidly cycling between freezing cold and intense heat. The crystal creatures would have to constantly adapt their body structure to survive. They're entering the first zone now, Sun Wu reported, watching through the security cameras. The creatures moved forward, their bodies changing to handle the extreme cold. But as soon as they adapted, they hit a section of intense heat. Look at their crystal structure, Sun Wu said with fascination. The constant changes are creating stress patterns. They can't adapt fast enough. The creatures pressed forward, their hunting instincts driving them toward their prey. But with each temperature zone they crossed, their crystalline bodies showed more signs of strain. Cracks appeared in their surfaces. Their movements became less coordinated. Now for the final part, He-Jin said. He activated the emergency purge system. All the temperature zones began switching rapidly between hot and cold. The creatures couldn't keep up with the changes. One by one, their bodies began to fracture and break apart. In less than 5 minutes, it was over. The perfect predators, designed to be unstoppable, had been defeated not by superior weapons or strength, but by the clever tactics that Earth's prey species had taught humanity over millions of years. Hours later, as they led the rescued research team back to their shuttle, Chief Researcher Yongmei contacted them from the ship above. The Council wants a full report, she said, her silver skin glowing with relief. How did you defeat creatures that an advanced civilization couldn't control? He-Jin smiled. We didn't beat them by being stronger or more advanced. We beat them by understanding both sides of nature's balance. On Earth, every creature, no matter how small, contributes to the wisdom of survival. Sun Wu nodded, adding, the ancient civilization tried to create perfect predators, but they didn't understand what humans learned on Earth, that true survival comes from adapting, from learning, from understanding both predator and prey. As they boarded the shuttle, Jiho turned to He-Jin. When we first met, we thought Earth's creatures were terrifying. But now I understand. It wasn't the creatures that made humans special. It was what you learned from them. The shuttle lifted off, leaving behind the dark ruins and their failed experiment in creating the perfect hunters. In the end, it wasn't technology or engineering that had saved them, but the simple wisdom that every Earth creature knew. Survival wasn't about being the perfect predator or the perfect prey. It was about understanding both, adapting to both, and finding the balance between them. That was humanity's true strength, and now the galaxy would know it too.